I have a question about how to different your intuition and what you're manifesting versus what your life experiences had given you already. So
should I rely on my practical experience or my now intuitive, inspired calling?
Yes, you go through life and you go through these experiences and you feel like you know, so you don't put yourself out there to do certain things. Okay, let's go relationship. I'm in this relationship.
A lot of times your experiences actually cause you to practice a vibration of hindrance.
Right.
And so the more experienced you are, the more resistance you have on the subject. That's why it's easier to create on subjects that you don't have a lot of history than on subjects where you do have a lot of practiced thought.
How do you not know if it's your tuition?
So let us give you a very clear answer, and then we want to talk about what you want to talk about, if you still want to talk about it. So one of the things, we know you have felt it. So here you are in a gathering, and here's Esther, and she seems sure of herself, and there's continuity to what she says, and logic to it too, and you're feeling some resonance with it here and there and here and there and here and there. And so it would be possible, in fact it happens all the time, that someone in the audience comes to the conclusion that Esther's just really good at what she does and really believes what she is saying, as do a lot of people who talk about a lot of things, and many of them in absolute contradiction to what's going on here. And so this could just be another opinion that I am exposing myself to, and blah, blah, blah. And we say that falls into the category of words don't really teach. But as we play together, if we can get your attention about your relationship with your inner being, and we can help you to explore / remember that you are an extension of non-physical energy, so that the awareness of the two aspects of you are feeling some resonance with. And then we can offer some processes, or even in your listening in, your vibration rises as a result of just what you're paying attention to. So that, as in meditation, when you focus in a way that there's no resistance being introduced, your vibration naturally rises. And when that happens, you are in what we call the receiving mode of who you really are. You are under the influence of your broader perspective. And when you are under the influence of your broader perspective, that's when that intuition or impulses sometimes come. If you are able to make the association that I am tuned in, tapped in, turned on right now, I can feel that I'm under that influence, and you receive an inspiration that you then follow. And then the following of that leads to something that leads to something that gives you something that you've been wanting. Then you're able to make the personal association between what you accomplished vibrationally and what happened. But if you have not yet identified or made that association, if you are able to isolate emotion, isolate in essence a sort of cause and effect. I meditated, I quieted my mind. I know that I quieted my mind because I felt detached. And in that detached state, I felt better and better and better, which is logical to me that my vibration was rising. And then a clarity came over me where an idea came from a place that I had not experienced it before that was so sweet that when I tasted it, I wanted it and I followed it, and the payoff was obvious to me. So I've made the association. That's the sort of guidance that we want you to follow. And until you make that association, then it's sort of a crapshoot. Because the truth of it is, often, without doing it on purpose, you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on. And often, you get tuned in and you get an impulse and you follow it. But you often don't make the association between whether you were under the influence of your non-physical energy or not. That broader perspective is the question at hand here, isn't it?
I have two scenarios. One, I'll do the one first and then I'll end with the other one. Okay, so I'm pressure washing my home. And I'm looking at the pressure washer. I'm like, that thing is gonna break. So I'm pressure washed, like, I want to send it back. Like, okay, I don't want it to break. So I want to send that thing back into the universe and say it's not gonna break. So I continue to pressure wash and I continue, and then it breaks. I'm like, was that in my intuition to stop?
So the question is,
Pressure washing?
Esther has asked herself this many times. Did I sense it was about to break, or did I break it?
Yes.
But once again, the answer is the same. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I sensed it and then pushed against in that way, or whether my pushing against is what broke it. The important thing is, what do I do now? Now what? Because once that's happened, now what? Now what? And so Esther, and you too, can read vibration. In the monster bus one day, Esther heard the refrigerator. She worked at a kitchen table very near to the refrigerator in this 45-foot bus. And she was accustomed to being there close to it. And one day she said to Jerry, something's wrong with the refrigerator. And Jerry said, what do you mean? And she said, it sounds different. And Jerry said, what do you mean? And she said, I can hear a difference in its frequency somehow. And Jerry said, what do you mean? And Esther said, I don't know. It just sounds different. Well, 2 days later, the compressor went out on the refrigerator. And Jerry said, boy, you were able to hear that. And Esther said, I don't know if I heard it or if I sensed it, because she couldn't describe what she was hearing, or if I sensed it. And he said, well, I guess it doesn't make any difference. So she got a sort of advanced announcement about it. So what is the advantage of an advanced announcement? Really not much advantage, because you weren't going to order a new pressure washer until that one really did kill itself. And Esther wasn't going to, it's not easy to find a compressor for a monster bus out in the middle of Omaha. I think there's going to be something wrong with my compressor and I would like to replace it. Okay, lady. I'll put this on the back burner, along with the other pile of crazy people that I've met before. The thing that we like so much about those experiences is that it helps you to identify and isolate what that felt like and then what happened, cause and effect again. There are a lot of things going on in this world with which you are interacting. And things that are of a physical nature are doing what they do, because everything that is physical has resistance. If there were not resistance, you couldn't even harness electricity. The thing that makes you able to use your electricity is that you are able to put some resistance on it so that you can utilize it and measure how much of it you are letting through, yes? And so resistance is part of the balance of physicality. It's a good thing, it's not a bad thing. So understanding that there is resistance in all things, and then learning from your own ability to decipher it, what it means, and then noting the relationship, that's really what we're teaching here. But instead of teaching you to listen for your compressor on your refrigerator or listen for the compressor on the pressure washer, we're asking you to listen to your emotions, which are a much more subtle reading of energies. And if you are always releasing your own resistance whenever you feel it, the pressure washer in you will never blow up if you're tending to it on a sort of moment by moment basis. What happens with humans, that's you all, is that you do want justification, meaning evidence that others can see, to justify things that you are doing. And that holds you way, 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 way back. It slows you way down. If you could just acknowledge that I feel things out ahead of time that most don't feel. And in the same way that I feel it with things like that, I can feel it with emotions too, which means I can do something about maintaining my balance before it gets to the point that the balance cannot be maintained. Yes?
Yes. Leading me to my last question. That was great. So I meet my new friend in the parking lot who's been studying you for years. So last Sunday, I got this energy to go to Tesla and test drive because it's one of my to-do lists and my goal list. And I'm like, I'm just going to go and I'm going to test drive. So I go there and I meet the manager, who's a super guy, and he's talking. He was like, "What brings you here?" I said, "Oh, my energy just told me to come." So I get there, and he's like, "Oh, good, because I believe in energy, and I'm back and forth. We had a nice conversation." I was like, "Oh, have you ever heard of Abraham Hicks?" He was like, "No, I never heard of her." And I was like, "Oh, well, let me tell you about her and YouTube her." So by the time I did my test drive and came back, he was like, "Oh my gosh, she's awesome." He was like all over her. I swear that's the reason why I'm sitting in this chair right now, because I introduced him. I followed my energy, introduced him to the teaching, and it manifests back to me sitting here. That's possible?
Well, the reason that you're sitting here is because you have strong desires and you're in a very good proximity of those desires manifesting. You are in this invincible place where you can be or do or have anything that you choose. And so what we want you to hear is that it is only the limits that you place. What you choose can be as big as you can believe it to be. But this is what we mean by identifying and isolating emotions and then noticing the results of them. So you're doing exactly what we're talking about doing. You're not just sitting somewhere in the audience and watching someone who seems to have a strong conviction and then walking around and trying to mimic some of the things that you've heard. Instead, you are feeling the resonance of it and identifying that resonance within you and focusing on it until it becomes stronger, and then following the impulse of that, and in following the impulse of it, then feeling the growth or expansion of it, and then understanding through that personal experience that you do create your own reality. You do create your own reality. The thing that we want to really pile on top of that is, while you are creating your own reality, you have resources that would blow your mind of non-physical energies that are in on you creating your own reality. You underestimate the power of your desire and the power of your backup system and the power of the non-physical energies who are focused here with you now. And so this conversation is just because you have been asking for this little nudge that you want, and some would say need, we would say want. Get out ahead of it and dream bigger and watch what happens. There are no limits, and you are on the brink of giving up your limitations. Esther has a really dear friend that she met years ago. And her friend and her boyfriend purchased a many hundreds of acre ranch in Colorado. It was actually a lodge and cabins, hundreds of acres of cross-country skiers. And it was surrounded on three sides by the national forest. And one night, Esther and her friend are sitting in front of a fireplace. And Esther is enjoying what she's feeling from her friend, because her friend feels different than last time Esther talked with her. Esther's actually thinking, what's this new thing I'm feeling from you? And her friend looked up and she said, you know, what's the best thing about this place? There are so many things to be afraid of out here that I had to give most of them up. And Esther thought, that's what I'm seeing. She just didn't have time to keep all of her fears activated because there were just so many of them that it just became sort of ridiculous. And that's what's happening globally to all of you. There is so much contrast that is going on that you're reaching this sort of culmination place where you are no longer willing to sweat all of the small stuff because there's just too much small stuff to sweat. And it's occupying too large of a percentage of your attention and therefore muting the sun that shines on you all of the time. And so that's sort of the other end of this stick that you are on. In other words, you've already broken out into the daylight and now you are just exploring it, but you're not quite sure that what you're seeing is real or is forever or is steady. And we want to tell you it is. You'll never go back.